Hello, my wonderful listeners and viewers. This is a quick reminder to let you know that I've got a very special subscriber show, Failing with Friends, where my fantastic guests get to be agony aunts, uncles, or non-binary advice givers. You can join us there just by following the link in the show notes. Hello and welcome to How to Fail. This is the podcast where every week I ask a new guest about 3 times they think they've failed in their life and what, if anything, they learn along the way.
Food and all that stuff was so stressful. It was always, you just couldn't help but have a disordered relationship with it all. And I dance all the time in my house, in my living room. You know, I'll even dance on the sidewalk. I don't care. Taylor Swift walked in the room and it was like all the air. It's like you could just feel it.
For many of us who grew up in the 90s, Julia Stiles would have been an integral part of our coming of age. Her portrayal of the clever, acerbic cat in 10 Things I Hate About You was a radical reinvention of the teenage female rom-com lead and gave us permission to be unapologetically ourselves. Her roles in Save the Last Dance and Mona Lisa Smile spoke to our adolescent feminist awakenings and catapulted Stiles to stardom. And just like the heroines she played, Stiles did things a bit differently. At the height of her teenage fame, she chose to study English at Columbia University, continuing to act throughout her degree, most notably in the first of 4 Jason Bourne films. After graduation, her career was varied and interesting, from big screen reinventions of Shakespeare classics to a vengeance-seeking sexual assault survivor in Dexter, which earned her an Emmy nomination. But it was while playing a journalist in the 2019 hit Hustlers that she felt able to take more control of her professional life. Her latest project is her directorial debut, the feature film Wish You Were Here, which Stiles also produced and co-wrote. As a mother of 3, Stiles said that her parenting informed her ability to direct. Because mums, or women in general, have to be very good at multitasking, she says. You have to be good at managing a budget. You have to be good at managing your time. You have to take care of other people, but also nudge them in a certain direction. And you have to function well with very little sleep. Julia Stiles, welcome to How to Fail.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to soak that in for a second.
Please do.
I'm going to take that intro in. That was very nice to hear.
Please do. Well, it came from the heart because I feel that I have grown up with you. And I want to say thank you so much for that, for giving us all permission to be ourselves. But I want to start with your directorial debut with Wish You Were Here. You went into directing this movie with a 5-month-old.
I did.
How was that experience?
I mean, it was wild. It was exhilarating. I was obviously exhausted, but I was also completely energized because I was finally making my first movie as a director, because there's a bit of a high that you have after you give birth to a baby. I definitely have to say that I did not do it alone. I had a lot of support. But I look back on it and I'm like, whoa, yeah, it was pretty nuts.
You did a fantastic job.
Thank you. Thanks.
And it's such an interesting film because whilst there is a romantic comedy element, it is in no way corny. It's very poignant and very deep. How easy or difficult a line was that for you to tread?
I remember early on, because I adapted the screenplay from a book by Renee Carlino, and I remember getting notes on the script early on that were, and also my director's cut even, that were like, well, what is this movie? Is it a comedy or is it a drama? Or it's like the first part of the movie is funny, but then the last part of the movie is really sad. And that was very intentional for me because it was what I responded to about the book, that there was that you could have moments where you're laughing and then all of a sudden you're crying and then you're laughing and crying at the same time. And I think that's much like life. But I also was aware of kind of trying to draw the audience in with lightness and humor and almost the sort of romantic comedy that we're used to. And then what I loved about the book, and I tried to do in the movie, is that despite how young the main characters are and how new this romance is, it's actually really deep and touches on things that are just more timeless, more, I don't want to say heavy, but like just something a lot more grounded than just, a rom-com.
Yes. Well, it strikes me that it's about lives lived and unlived without giving too much away.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this real resonance to it. It's I think you do a beautiful job of that balance. But I understand that at one point your script supervisor said to you that you had to stop qualifying your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell us that story. I'm so interested in it.
Yes, and thank you for specifying. Qualifying was a good way to put it, because I sort of reduced it to stop apologizing. But actually, she did say stop apologizing, but I think what she meant was stop qualifying. She didn't mean that I was saying I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She meant that I was explaining every time I would say, this is what I need for my vision, or this is what I need on set. I explained and I explained and I explained almost as if I was asking permission. And I think ultimately she was telling me to stop being so accommodating. At a certain point, you have to put your foot down and say, well, I need a white teacup, and I'm going to wait for the white teacup until it gets here.
Yes. Stepping into your power. And I wonder, because female directors are still comparatively rare, which seems a ludicrous thing to say in 2025.
Yeah.
But how much of that do you think is to do with this social conditioning that a certain kind of cis woman has, which is to ask for permission and to people please?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely comes from being an actress. As an actress, you are. It's so ingrained in me to want to make sure that I'm likable. Like, I don't want to rub people the wrong way. Part of being an actress is you have to get cast in any given part, and that means that the people making that decision have to like you. And so I think I wasn't even aware of, now I have to be front-footed about everything. I have to be ahead, thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else, anticipating the things that I'm going to need. And if for whatever reason somebody thinks that I'm being too aggressive or too assertive, it doesn't matter. Who cares?
That's so interesting that you say that, given that I started off this introduction talking about one of my favourite movies of all time, which is 10 Things I Hate About You. And the role of Kat, who is someone who is angsty and intelligent and unapologetically not part of the in crowd at high school. And it's difficult to remember now, but that was so radical at the time. And I wonder how much that role gave you a sort of liberating ability to be someone more like Kat.
Right. I mean, it was really rare for the time. And I remember specifically being an auditioning actress at 17. And there was a trend in rom-coms and just teen romances. And it was like one movie after another, I was not getting the part. And I would go to commercial auditions and they would tell me to be more bubbly and more effervescent and not so serious and smile more and be sexier. And you're constantly being judged like any auditioning actor. But when I read the part of Kat, I was like, oh my God, this is so refreshing because she is so assertive. Now, I will say, I think it was almost aspirational for me. I don't think I stepped into that role gratefully and gleefully because I was like, I get to be like assertive Kat 2.0. And I didn't necessarily do that in my own life.
Yes.
Even later in life.
And how old were you at the time that you got Kat?
17.
Okay, so yes, it's very kind of potent time to have that experience.
And I didn't even see examples of characters like that, women like that, young women like that, that much, particularly in high school movies.
Yeah. Let's get on to your failures, because I think the first one speaks to a lot of what we've been talking about, which is not keeping in touch with your closest friends.
Yes.
And the reason I think it pertains to what we've been talking about is because you started working very young. So take us back to, you grew up in New York and you wrote a letter to a theatre director, is that right?
I did. My mom's an artist, and my parents were really good friends with a production designer and the founder of this very fringe theater company that would do shows in downtown Manhattan, and they would hang out and have dinners together. And I remember being very outgoing and loving, like, school plays and performances. And I always played dress up. And growing up in New York City, we didn't have a backyard, so my backyard was my imagination, and I would mimic what I saw on TV. And they said they had a part for a kid, and I guess I had the chutzpah to be like, I wrote a letter. I said all the characters that I had made up, and I could bring the costume. I don't know, something really ridiculously precocious. But they gave me a part in their first in my first play with them that was not speaking. I think I was like napping on the floor the whole time. And then slowly the roles got bigger and bigger. And then I was part of the company. And they helped me find an agent. And then I started auditioning.
And is that partly why you struggle to keep in touch with close friends, because you work so much of the time?
Now I think it's actually being a parent, probably. And all of my friends have moved out of New York City, and most of them have their own families. And so we just all get busy. But I think it's also technology. Like, you think that you're keeping in touch with your friends over when you think about them and you text message. But it's not really the same as like sitting down and having a coffee or having somebody over, or going on vacation. I used to go on vacation with my girlfriends, but now we're lucky if we can plan, a coffee. I'm trying to make more of an effort now. And I will say that the text messaging thing, or voice memos, are really nice. I'm a big fan of sending a voice memo as though it's like a voicemail.
Ditto.
But for some reason, we listen to the voice memo more. That feels closer. And just letting them know that I'm thinking about them. But I guess I lament that I feel like I'm a terrible friend, because even though I love my friends and I care about them and I do want to keep in touch with them, time will pass. And then when we do reunite, I'm like, something amazing or tragic, whatever might have happened in their life. And I'm like, what? I didn't know about this. Why didn't you tell me? Yeah. So I think you have to really make a conscious effort to ask the questions and check in on your friends.
Do you think they think you're a bad friend?
No. I mean, I hope not. No. I think that everybody understands at this point in life that it's hard. We're just off in different directions and everybody's busy. And the best thing about the thing that I've learned from having to think about this for your podcast is the really, really deep, closest friends that have been around the longest. It's like riding a bicycle. The minute you do catch up with them, whether it's in person or over the phone, everything falls back into place. And it's like you haven't missed a beat.
I totally agree. I actually wrote a book about friendship. And so this is something that completely fascinates me. And I think the most important metric of friendship is that generosity of spirit, so that you don't feel guilty if life is too busy to constantly be in touch. The idea that when you do see each other, you can pick up where you left off is so generous.
That is brilliant. And that is so true, because I think of my handful, I can count them less than one hand, closest friends. They never put that pressure on me of like, or the holding a grudge or resentment about, oh, well, you didn't call me, on my dog's birthday, or you didn't, whatever it is, or like, it's just, we're not holding on to that.
Yeah. How has fame affected your approach to friendship?
That is a relationship that I've been navigating for quite some time. So I would say that I don't stress about it, and I don't think about it as much now in terms of being open to friendships and new friendships. I think in my 20s, I probably was a little bit more guarded. I'm not sure. I think I have a good sense. I just have an innate sense of like, I can smell if something's off. But other than that, I don't really think about it. Like, I'm open to being friends with you if we are interested in the same things and we have a good vibe going.
Because I was very interested by the thing that I mentioned in the introduction about that decision to study English at Columbia, when you could have very easily sort of been back to back in lead movies. What was important for you about that decision at that stage?
There was so much. I just kind of always knew that I was going to go to college, or I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to have that experience. I think now, in retrospect, I look back on college and I think, oh, I was definitely like running in the other direction from fame, there was something about this change in my life that made me uncomfortable, and school was something that I could control. I could go to university and focus on other things, and it would help me make sense of this transitional time in my life. And I wasn't thinking strategically necessarily about my career. Like, I'm sure I had agents and managers, whatever, telling me like, what, you want to go to college? Like my freshman year of college, I think Save the Last Dance maybe came out, or I was doing promotion for something, and the interviews were always about, oh, she's a freshman in college. And so then I was like, well, I have to finish. I can't, this is cheap if I like brag that I've started college, but I don't actually graduate. I look back on that experience and I was in a bit of a fishbowl, but I was totally pretending that I wasn't, which is, I guess, healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Live in a state of functional denial.
Yeah, functional denial, exactly.
What was the discomfort that you mentioned there? The fact that you wanted to make a move away from fame?
Well, no, it's just a radical shift in anyone's life to be in people's television sets and in a movie, have a recognizable face. I mean, it comes in all different forms, but I'll say like a benign form is that you walk down the street and somebody does a double take and they think that like, oh, do I know you from somewhere? So it's just this, it's like a subtle but radical shift in someone's life. And as a performer, it's what you want, but because it means that people are wanting to watch what you do, or they're interested in the stories that you tell. But especially as a teenager, 17, 18, 19 years old, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. And so I think there was a part of me that knew, oh, you're doing all these interviews talking about yourself. And, I just knew that it was like, you can't become too obsessed with yourself. You have to go and do other things. And so college was another thing.
Yeah. It must have been so difficult as a teenager. I mean, just imagining myself at that age, when I was basically watching your movies, that would have been a very difficult thing to cope with.
I mean, and I think there was a lot that was exciting about it too. But yeah, I'm sure I flailed. Like I probably seem like I'm really put together, but I had a lot of like, I wasn't struggling. I just was like along for this ride that was exhilarating and then also kind of scary. And so was figuring out how to deal with it all through my 20s, really.
Did you have good friends then to help you through? I mean, perhaps some of your friends were people that you acted with because they understood.
I keep in touch with actors that I work with much more now than I did then. It always felt like we would go to set and have this really intense connection, and we'll be working together to finish the movie, and then the movie's finished and we all go home, and that's pretty much it at that time. My friendships, some of my best friends I made in college, and I latched onto them as like, you're with me regardless.
Are they still your friends now?
Yes.
Great. You see, you're a great friend.
In fact, I called one of my dearest, bestest friends, and we lose touch all the time, but we catch up when we can. I met in college. We went on spring break, we went on vacation together. And now I had called her, I left her a voice memo the other night because I was like, do you know that I tell the story to my middle son every night before he goes to bed? The story of like so-and-so and the broken arm. And it was of something that happened on this vacation. And I obviously water it down for kids, but it was just to let her know that I was thinking about her.
That's beautiful. What, you tell the story every night? He's just obsessed with it.
He asks for it, yes.
So you were talking about college there, and I referred to this in the introduction, that you got your role in the Jason Bourne movies when you were still at college.
Yes.
Tell us the story of how you found out you got that role.
It was so ridiculous. I look back on it now. I can visualize it. I was in my tiny little freshman year dorm room, was sent the sides because they wouldn't release the script for privacy reasons.
What's the sides?
Sides is like just the scene that you're in.
Okay.
Usually when you audition for something, they send you sides. So you're just reading the scene that you're in, or one of the scenes that they want you to read. But you can't read the whole script.
Okay.
So they sent me the sides, and the whole package was like, oh, Matt Damon's going to be in it, and Doug Liman is directing it. It's based on this book series, Universal Studios. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, but I have final exams coming up. Like, how am I going to fly to the Czech Republic? And luckily many people talked me out of that. And I got on a plane and went to Prague and filmed the scene. It was really like one or two scenes that I was in and then my character was supposed to be thrown up against the wall. And that was it. That was going to be the end of her fate in the franchise. And then many months later, when they were finishing editing the film, they were like, we need you to come in and record ADR, which is voice recording. And the voice recording was breathing, like heavy breathing, so that they could show that when they recut the film, they could show that my character was still alive. And then she survived, and I got to go on and make 3 more movies.
What was that experience like? Because quite a change in pace for you in terms of the sort of acting that you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was remarkable. I was like amazing. I feel so lucky to be a part of that franchise because it was on the forefront of changing the way action movies looked.
Yes.
The female characters in those movies got to do a whole lot more. And amazing directors like Doug Liman, who I keep in touch with, got the rights to the book, started the franchise, designed the look of the first film, cast Matt Damon, and then Paul Greengrass in, the next 3 movies that I got to do with them. And I learned so much from them. I mean, I learned so much. Paul Greengrass is one of the loveliest, kindest human beings, and also carrying the stress of what became a giant action franchise. And every movie that they ended up making after that, it's like the budgets got bigger, and the ways that they had to impress the audiences got bigger and bigger, and the entourages got bigger. And he was like held on to his visionariness as a director, and he could pivot and be spontaneous, even though they were spending all this money and time and prep on action sequences. And through all of that, I took away from the experience that he was like managing all that, but still really, really kind and decent to every single person that worked on those films.
Beautiful. And I wish I could go back in time and watch The Bourne Identity again for the first time, because you're so right. It completely revolutionized that kind of movie.
It did. The handheld camera work, casting Franca Potente, and the way that they filmed in Europe and making it look like a gritty, almost European or indie film. And yet, it was really groundbreaking at the time. And Matt Damon was a huge star, but he wasn't considered an action hero. He was the writer, the cerebral,
Yeah. Well, your second failure is to do with a different film. Equally iconic, Save the Last Dance.
Yes.
And your second failure, which actually broke my heart to read it, is that you quit dance lessons after that movie.
Yeah, I mean, not consciously, but I look back on in the 20 years since, or whatever, 25 years since we made that movie, I haven't been to a single formal dance class. Now, I absolutely love to dance, and that has not gone away, and that will never go away. And I dance all the time in my house, in my living room. I'll even dance on the sidewalk. I don't care. Like I'll walk down a New York City street with my headphones on, and I will catch myself like shimmying a little bit, and then I have to go, oh my God, I'm in public. You can't do that. So my love of dance has not gone away. But I haven't been to a formal class at all. There was a period of time during the pandemic where I would do like virtual dance classes. There were studios online that would post, like, there were great teachers that would post their own like dance class, and I would do that in the privacy of my own home. And it's because, am I lazy? Maybe, but it's also the self-consciousness of like dancing in front of, I've done aqua Zumba, which is like Zumba inside a pool, so nobody can see what your body is doing.
Yeah.
No, but like, I guess it's just being self-conscious, which is such a shame. I should get over that. And I will. I've had friends who've wanted me to go to like the, whatever dance classes that are at their gym or something. And eventually I'll drag myself to do it.
And is the self-consciousness to do with Save the Last Dance and having seen yourself on screen, or what the audition scene then became in terms of it becoming a meme and being reinvented by TikTok?
Right.
Was that all part of it? I
mean, dancers are a judgmental group. They can be. They're also a very supportive group. Yeah, it sounds stupid when I say it out loud now because, like, who cares? But
it doesn't.
I think that if I went to like a serious, whether it's ballet or hip hop kind of dance class, I would feel like I was being judged based on that movie, and like I'm supposed to be a professional dancer. But yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna put my leggings on and find a class. I just have to find the right class, the one that would be like really fun for me.
You could get a private dance class.
I could.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe I never thought of that. I could.
You could get someone to come to your home.
Well, I did a TV show a British TV show, actually, where there was one scene where we had to dance. It was a tango, and I got to do tango lessons, and I fucking loved it so much that I definitely need to recreate that kind of joy in my life.
Talk to me about your love of dance and how early that started and what it represents for you.
Yeah, I mean, I started taking modern dance classes in elementary school, and there was a teacher, Ellen Robbins, who taught children's dance classes at Dance Theater Workshop in New York. And Claire Danes actually, I think, also took those classes. We would have our formal, it wasn't loosey-goosey modern dance. It was like Martha Graham, kind of very structured and rooted in ballet. But the last half hour of the class, somebody got to pick a record, and she played records. And we were allowed to improvise. And I'm sure it looked ridiculous and silly, but it always gave me that love of the rather than just the repetition and the structure and getting the steps right, this was like moving your body from the inside out. Pretty cute.
Do you think you're a perfectionist?
I can be. Yeah, totally. I can be.
Because that kind of improvisation is very good for people who struggle with perfectionism.
Yeah, and also and getting rid of self-consciousness, although I was a child and a teenager then, so I think I was, not as self-conscious as I would be now as an adult.
You also dance in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yes,
that epic
that's what got me
dancing.
the job in Save the Last Dance. I'm not joking. I was told by the director of Save the Last Dance, Thomas Carter, that he saw that scene in 10 Things I Hate About You, and that's why he thought we can cast any white girl to do the ballet, but we need somebody who also has rhythm in a different way.
Yeah.
And because he saw that, he thought he had confidence in me in the other part of
your third failure, which is hating on your body in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for picking this one. Why did you pick it?
I'm actually, as I wrote that to you, I was like, I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this. And I also tried to reframe it as a positive thing of taking better care of my body. Where do I start? It's partially just, okay, so I remember on the set of Mona Lisa Smile, Julia Roberts was an amazing example for us. And she was so maternal with all the young women on that set, and coming from a lot of experience of being not just a woman, but also a woman where what your appearance is focused on so heavily. And she said to us at one point, you're going to look back on these photos of you in your 20s and be like, I was beautiful. What was wrong with, why didn't I see that? And she was totally right. But I think also my relationship with my body and food and diet and exercise and my appearance radically changed. When I had kids, being pregnant, nourishing a baby, growing a baby, all that stuff. And then also directing a movie, which is similar to having a baby in some ways. I mean, creatively, spiritually, whatever. Yeah. I went from, just like in my 20s and early 30s, being an actress, there's so much focus on your appearance and are you going to fit into certain clothes? And I'm not the first person to say this. My whole, even as sort of grounded as I was and coming from a mother who never emphasized those things, food and all that stuff was so stressful. It was always, you just couldn't help but have a disordered relationship with it all. And then and also just about I'm not talking about an eating disorder. I'm just saying a restrictive, regimented, stressful, everything is stressful. And always worried that it's going to be out of my control. Well, what if I gain weight? What about this? And then when I decided I wanted to have kids, started looking at things differently of I need this machine to work. So I need to fuel my body and I need to nourish it and I need to fuel this baby and nourish it. And everything just fell into place where it was just I relaxed. I naturally wanted to eat the things that were going to make me feel better, and help me grow. And it all just became easier. And then having a baby and then having 3 babies now, I'm whoa, my body can do magical, wonderful, amazing things. And when I relaxed and I started to trust it more, everything fell into place. And it's doing totally what it's supposed to do. And then with directing, it was I'm not focused inward so much. I'm not focused on every little detail of my appearance. I'm focused outward on the task at hand. So I don't have time to think about all the imperfections. I actually like need to fuel my body so that I can get through the 15-hour workday, so that my brain can be focused. And that also was like, that was the first time that I was on a film set. This like tactile experience of being in the environment, of seeing cameras everywhere and seeing grips and electrics and hair and makeup and the costume department. I was on a film set, and I wasn't stressed about the snack table.
I find that so moving, how you just put it. Thank you. Because although you say I'm not the first person to speak about this, actually it's very rare that someone comes on this podcast and is brave enough to say those things, and I'm not a Hollywood superstar, but I relate to every single word. And I think for women who didn't live through the 90s, it's difficult to understand how much pressure was put on any woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't imagine how magnified that was being in the public eye, especially at a time when you were famous and your body was going through changes.
Oh my God. I mean, yes. And thank you for saying that too. Because as I'm sitting here saying it, I was listening to your Celeste Barber interview, and I was talking back to the speaker like, this is what I'm going to say there's a part of me that in talking about this is like a little bit scared because somebody's going to pull it off. I pull it out of context and put it on Twitter, and that'll be clickbait that like, Julia Stiles struggles with body issues. Well, no, every woman struggles with them, and it's such a waste of fucking time.
Yeah. When you were struggling with them, there's so much I want to ask you about this, because I recently have been thinking about weight loss jabs as lifestyle choice rather than when people actually need to be on Ozempic or Mounjaro for health reasons because they're obese or pre-diabetic. And ultimately, whilst I also am fully behind people choosing what they want to do with their own bodies, it's made me look internally at how I have this constant narrative still unspooling in my head, which I'm aware of now, which I wasn't aware of in the 90s. I just thought it was me, which is you should be thinner still.
Yeah.
And I, like you, I've never had an eating disorder. And I salute people who live with them because it's such a difficult thing I imagine, to live with. But I definitely have disordered thoughts about eating. And it all comes from this legacy of a woman having to be a certain size.
Yeah. That was the aesthetic back then. Hasn't really changed that much, but yeah, again, I wanted to specify it's like not an eating disorder. There's stress around it, around what your body looks like and trying to mold your body into a certain size. For me as an actress, it was do we fit in? Because we go and promote on a red carpet and we have to wear sample sizes from fashion designers. And so if you don't, so it was always like, are you going to fit into the sample size? And now I don't even have to really think about it because I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah. Were you made to feel like a failure for not fitting into a sample size at some point in?
I am sure that I was, but I'm not going to get specific about it because I've moved on. Like I just found that it was like such a being on the set of Wish You Were Here. I again the stress around the snack table. I was like, cool. I have the afternoon to get through, and I'm losing energy. I'm going to have some M&Ms, and I don't care. And my body didn't care. Like it's all fine. Or I need this egg sandwich in the morning because I need my brain to focus and I need energy. And I point that out specifically because it was being on a film set, which I thought like maybe kinetically or energetically my body would go like, oh, here we are again. There's those cameras, but it didn't. Because I was focused outward and I had a task to do that was bringing me a lot of joy and a lot of satisfaction. That's what was more important. Yeah.
If anyone right now is listening to this and they are struggling with some of the things that you struggled with, and to a certain extent I struggled with, I wonder what advice you would give them.
Oh, that's hard because it comes in all different forms, right? I mean, I don't think that I'm any sort of expert. But I guess the reason that I brought it up as one of my failures is what I've learned is to be kinder in terms of the way I think and think about my body and look at my body, to be kinder to myself, but also trust your body. Like that was the thing that clicked with me, is that when I got pregnant, had children, even going into labor, trusting my body that it would know what to do, like, just changed everything on a cellular level. And same thing with Wish You Were Here, directing a movie. I would be running on fumes, like no sleep, having just had a 5-month-old baby, and I didn't have time to think about, am I going to get back in shape to fit into those sample sizes?
Do you think you care less what other people think of you?
Yes and no. I think that I guess I do. I have my moments, though.
Yeah.
I think